Hi, I'm Jessica, 32, Senior Project Manager. My sister Madison asked for 38,000 and I said no. My Barcelona start date, 3 weeks away. I advanced the flight 6 days. One way, confirmed. 5:22 p.m. Dad texted, "Co-sign her mortgage or don't come back." I documented the message. Screenshots. Timestamps saved. By 11:57 p.m., I closed access. Removed her authorized card. Disputed 6,000 charges. Revoked her beneficiary listing. Changed passwords and recovery emails. Enabled two-factor on all accounts. Morning showed 57 missed calls. I brewed coffee and packed. If you've chosen yourself over guilt, share your moment below. Their condition was co-signing. Mine was leaving. I learned early how our house kept score. Wins for Madison were family victories. Mine were nice, then filed away. Report cards proved the pattern. Her A's got dinner out. My B+ asked, "Why not A?" She made varsity volleyball. Dad filmed every game, smiling. I joined art club. Mom forgot pickups more than once. At 16, she got a car. Polished, insured, celebrated. My 16? Applebee's and a gift card. Be grateful, Mom reminded gently. Senior year, I saved for DC. Cash in a lockbox counted nightly. Half vanished before I left. Madison needed concert money. Sharing is what families do, Mom said, closing the topic. I didn't go to Washington. I learned to guard quietly. College repeated the script. She borrowed, promised, forgot. I worked 2 jobs, semesters straight. She posted weekend trips, new shoes. After her engagement, we teamed up. Vendors needed a credit card. I added her as authorized user. Temporary, she said, smiling bright. Life moved. I worked, saved, planned. The card stayed, forgotten by me. 3 weeks before the house request. Charges stacked on my statement. Restaurants, boutiques, a spa package. Total, 6,047, no heads up. When I asked, she pivoted. We're furnishing our home, remember? Dad's line followed, practiced and firm. Family first. Step up, Jessica. Family first meant my accounts open. Their plans, my obligation. I kept my voice even. Needs and wants aren't the same. A house is a want. My savings is a need. If I paid, I stayed small. If I refused, I grew. That afternoon, I chose growth. I chose documentation, not debate. Screenshots, dates, balances, names. A ledger they couldn't edit. I stopped being their emergency fund and became my own witness. Dad's text sat open on my screen. Cosign or don't come back. I read it twice. Then I wrote my answer. I won't cosign, please stop asking. I saved the screenshot with time. Next, I opened my checklist. Item 1. Remove her access. I called the card issuer. Remove an authorized user immediately. The agent verified identity. I read the last 4 digits. Madison is now removed, she said. Dispute the recent charges? Yes, total 6,047 without permission. She filed a case number. I downloaded the confirmation PDF. Saved it to a new folder. Item 2. Fix beneficiary designations. Bank call, 28 minutes hold. Remove Madison as beneficiary, I said. Send the update form now. DocuSign pinged my inbox. I signed, date stamped, archived. Item 3. Rebuild my digital perimeter. New passwords for every account. New recovery emails and numbers. 2-factor on everything, no exceptions. Item 4. Secure investments. I called my broker directly. Add a verbal passphrase. No changes without in-person ID. He hesitated, then understood. Consider your accounts locked tight. I finished before midnight. My apartment felt newly quiet. Then I wrote the family email. Subject. Financial boundaries. Effective immediately. I won't co-sign any loans. No down payment contributions. No shared cards or accounts. All access has been revoked. This is final and non-negotiable. I wish you well. I added my work address. Retired the personal one they had. Then I closed the laptop. I made a file index. Texts, voicemails, screenshots, confirmations. A ledger they couldn't recast. The calls started anyway. First Madison, then Dad. Then cousins I never see. Family is everything, they said. They didn't mention obligations direction. Only the consequences of no. I didn't argue. I logged each message. Name. Time. Summary. Exact phrases, not impressions. At 9:40 p.m., Aunt Carol called. Your mother asked me to fix you. I'm calling to support you, she said. You're doing the smart thing. Her voice steadied my breathing. She offered help, not terms. At 10:18 p.m., Vanessa rang. Tell me your side, she said. I told her everything. She didn't flinch or lecture. Barcelona fits you, she said. Keep going. By 11:57 p.m. the list was done. I labeled the folder Boundaries. The building finally slept. I finally did too. Morning would bring backlash. Preparation would bring calm. I wasn't their safety net. I was my own firewall. I stopped explaining my no and started engineering it. I landed on a Thursday. Company driver held a placard. Jessica Chen. Apartment keys waited at reception. Short lease near Parc de la Ciutadella. Orientation started Monday at 9. Elena emailed Sunday night instead. Can you start tomorrow, 10 AQ? We have pre-work before kickoff. Confirmed, I wrote back. No apologies, no explanations. The office sat near the marina. Glass, whiteboards, quiet focus. Elena introduced the room. Spain, Poland, Brazil, India, UK. Jess will handle distribution mapping, she said. 3 regions, 5 vendors, compressed timeline. I asked for raw feeds, orders, delays, chargebacks, carrier notes. We cleaned the data first. Then we modeled bottlenecks together. By 6:40 p.m., patterns surfaced. 2 lanes dragged averages month over month. I wrote a brief 12 slides. Bullets, not paragraphs. Elena skimmed, nodded once. Present tomorrow, 09:15. Friday moved like a metronome. I presented, then listened hard. The client liked specifics. They circled 3 recommendations immediately. Elena stopped me after. Good work, clear, testable, fast. Weekend arrived with errands. SIM card, transit card, groceries. I walked Ciutadella at dusk. Families, skaters, dogs, low music. I didn't feel brave. I felt correctly placed. Monday. Elena scheduled a one-on-one. Consider extending past 6 months. Amsterdam, Prague, maybe Singapore after. Leadership track if results hold. Let me think, I said. I already knew. That night I called Vanessa. Say yes, she said, laughing. I booked a therapy consult Tuesday. Dr. Martinez. English sessions for expats. Session 1 covered scripts. Family is everything, she quoted. Who defined everything? She asked. Who benefited? Needs versus wants, she continued. Your savings is need. Their house is want. Language matters. I left with homework. List facts when guilt spikes. Wednesday afternoon, Marcus messaged first. Jason's older brother, steady voice. Can we talk for 5 minutes? We met on video at 8. They can't afford that house, he said. Multiple cards near max. Late payments last winter, he added. Promotions not guaranteed. I warned them months ago, he said. They framed you as cruel. You're not, he finished. You're careful. The call ended. The room felt simpler. Thursday, payroll processed. I opened a Spanish account. Direct deposit set by noon. No shared access. Saturday, I apartment hunted for long term. Tall windows, small balcony, morning light. Lease signed 2 weeks later. Keys felt deserved, not borrowed. Work accelerated cleanly. Models turned into pilots. Ops leads reported early gains. Elena sent a short note. Keep this pace. Then slow down by choice. I slept through that night. No calls, no alarms. On Sunday, I unpacked fully. Cookware. Books. A framed mat. I stopped checking Philadelphia weather. I checked my project board. If homes are built by habits, mine finally matched my life. I didn't outrun my past. I outpaced it with proof. The first crack came by text. House fell through, Madison wrote. Seller moved on, she added. No mention of my refusal. An hour later, Jason's brother messaged. They found another place, he said. Smaller, worse neighborhood. His parents co-signed with rules. Strict spending caps, no new cards. Automatic savings required. He paused before the last line. They refused Madison's request for furniture money. I logged the details. Date, sender, exact phrasing. Work stayed steady. We launched the pilot in 2 regions. Ops leads confirmed early improvements. Elena flagged us to leadership. Then Aunt Carol emailed. Subject line, thought you should know. A local news article attached. Short, dry, careful. A couple investigated for insurance fraud. Suspicious burglary at their rental. Names withheld, but details familiar. Dates near their move-out. I read it twice. 3 times for certainty. I didn't forward it. I didn't call anyone. My phone rang that evening. Unknown Philadelphia number. I let it go once, then answered on the second. Jessica, it's Mom, she said. Her voice smaller than I remembered. I got this number from Carol. She rushed. Please don't be angry. Silence held a beat. Then she started again, slower. I'm sorry, she said finally. Not defensive. Not conditional. For the house pressure. For the mortgage ultimatum. For letting your father choose sides. For teaching you family first meant you last. For pretending Madison's wants were needs. For calling your work a phase. I stood by the window. Barcelona dusk thinned to blue. What changed? I asked. She exhaled into the line. Consequences, she said quietly. Ones we can't spin anymore. Your aunt showed me paperwork. Budgets, late fees, delinquent notices. I saw copies of your screenshots. The 6,000, the ultimatum. I thought I knew the story. I didn't, she said. You were right to leave. You were right about boundaries. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for access. She asked for one thing only. Can we talk again sometime? I measured the question, then answered in full. I can forgive, I said. But forgiveness isn't access. It isn't holidays, passwords, or cosigns. It isn't instant trust. It means I won't carry it. It doesn't mean you're inside. A long quiet followed. She accepted the line without argument. I understand, she said. I'll earn whatever comes. We ended on logistics. Email, not calls for now. No group chats. No surprise visits. After the call, I documented everything. Time, summary, her exact words. Then I made tea. Then I answered no one else. Dad sent a single message. Your mother is upset, period. Madison posted a status. Some sisters never grow up. I didn't reply. I didn't watch the comments. Elena's calendar invite landed. Leadership presentation, next Thursday. I rehearsed facts, not feelings. I slept cleanly that night. They reached for history. I offered terms. The leadership deck landed cleanly. Numbers first. Next steps second. Elena nodded, then offered clarity. Stay long-term, lead 2 regions. Amsterdam and Prague first, she said. Singapore after if you want. I asked for 48 hours. I needed none of them. I accepted the offer Tuesday. HR started the paperwork immediately. The new apartment felt settled. Keys hung where they belonged. Weeknights were language class and walks. Weekends were trains and museums. Colleagues became friends, then constants. We shared calendars, not crises. Therapy moved to monthly. Dr. Martinez trimmed the scripts. Your guilt isn't guidance, she said. Facts are. Mom emailed twice that month. Updates, no pressure, no asks. I replied when ready. Short, factual, steady. Dad didn't write. Silence stayed his choice. Madison DM'd once more. I blocked and archived quietly. Aunt Carol sent photos. She called my life earned. Work matched the word. We scaled pilots to rollouts. Ops reported stabilized lanes. Clients renewed early, at premium. Payroll hit my Spanish account. Savings grew without debate. I cooked for friends Friday. We toasted to boring peace. I booked flights for Singapore. 12-week prep, 2-year horizon. Before leaving, I walked Ciudadela. I called Vanessa at sunset. I'm okay, I told her. I'm more than okay. She laughed into the wind. Keep choosing this version. That night I wrote Mom. Barcelona is home, Singapore next. I'm open to slow contact. By email only for now. Send. Sleep. Morning. No panic, just plans. If family is everything, let it be chosen family. If love is real, let it respect boundaries. If forgiveness happens, let it arrive with proof. If you've chosen yourself over guilt, tell me your moment below. They wanted my signature. I signed my future.
The text came on a Thursday morning, short and cold family meeting. Tomorrow at 3. Be there. No name, no context, just a command. But I didn't need a signature to know it was from my mother. It had been exactly 1 week since I refused to sign over Grandpa Walter's estate, his business, his savings, everything he'd built over 50 years. He'd left it all to me, and the moment I said no, the silence from my family turned sharp. Clarice stopped replying to my messages. Colby unfollowed me online. Mom didn't call, but I knew it wasn't over. Ethan looked up from his coffee when he saw my face. Another message, I handed him my phone. He read it, jaw tightening. You're not going alone. I have to. You don't owe them this. No, I said. But I owe him. The next day, I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in. Everything looked normal. The lawn trimmed the porch clean, but something about it felt wrong. Too quiet. Too prepared. My mother opened the door before I knocked her lipstick too bright for the hour. Malin, she said, stepping aside. We've been waiting. Inside, everyone was already seated. Clarice gave me a glance sharp enough to cut glass. Zane sat stiffly at the edge of the couch, eyes down. Colby hovered near the fireplace, arms crossed. But it was the two men in pressed suits who made my stomach drop. "This is Mr. Lark and Mr. Devon," my mother said, gesturing like she was introducing party guests. "They're here to help us clarify the next steps." The man on the left opened a leather folder. "We've prepared a simple agreement." I didn't sit. I didn't reach for the pen. I just looked at my mother and asked, "What kind of meeting is this exactly?" She smiled the same way she used to when she knew something I didn't, just before she used it against me. Before anyone wanted the money, they wanted the man who built it. Or, at least, the image of him. To them, Grandpa Walter was a symbol of obligation, of expected reward. To me, he was something else entirely. I was 8, the first time he let me sit behind the counter at his flagship store, watching him count change and shake hands like every customer was family. At 10, I was labeling boxes. At 13, I was reviewing inventory sheets while other kids were at soccer practice. He never said I had to, he just left the papers near me like he already knew I'd be curious enough to care. At home, it was chaos under crystal chandeliers. Patrice rotated credit cards the way people rotated throw pillows. Colby pretended not to notice so long as there was steak in the fridge and a bottle on the bar. Rachel, back then still Clarice, learned to perform concern when it got her what she wanted. I was the quiet one, the boring one, the one who didn't ask for much. Grandpa used to say money doesn't change people. It shows you who they already were. I didn't understand that until the argument started. Screaming behind closed doors about misplaced checks, delayed transfers, ungrateful daughters. I never saw a bill get paid on time, but I saw a new designer bag on Mom's arm every other weekend. The year we were supposedly behind on the mortgage, she threw herself a birthday party with a string quartet and catered sushi. Grandpa showed up late, sat in the back, and left early. I noticed. So did she. When it came time for college, he offered to pay my tuition, but somehow the money vanished into something urgent. Medical bills, she said. Renovations. A crisis with Rachel. I took out loans. He slipped me envelopes with small notes. "Don't tell your mother. Use this for books." By the time he got sick, I had a job in finance and a growing understanding that no amount of loyalty would ever make them see me as anything but an outsider. Still, I stayed close. I listened when he vented. I helped him organize his files. And the week before he passed, when he looked me in the eye and said, "I've made my decision. Don't let them scare you out of it," I finally understood who he'd been preparing me to stand against. The air inside Mr. Holloway's office was stiff with formality. I sat across from the man who'd managed my grandfather's legal affairs for over a decade, flanked by family who suddenly felt like strangers. Clarice dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue she didn't need. Patrice wore sunglasses indoors. Zane sat quietly at the edge of the leather sofa, his shoulders tight. Mr. Holloway began with the usual formalities: donations to Grandpa's church, a small bequest to his housekeeper, an antique rifle to his childhood best friend. Clarice received a watch, Patrice a few paintings. Then came the part none of us were ready for. To my granddaughter, Malin Carter, he read I leave the remainder of my estate, including all business holdings, investment accounts, real property, and personal effects not otherwise designated. Clarice's gasp was instant. Patrice stiffened, then leaned forward. "Excuse me." "It's correct," Holloway replied. Mr. Matthews made these changes 8 months before his passing. He was of sound mind, and it was properly witnessed. "You manipulated him," Clarice snapped at me. "You spent time alone with him for this. I didn't ask for this," I said, but it didn't matter. Patrice stood slowly, sunglasses now in her hand. "We'll challenge it." Zane still hadn't said a word. Outside, as I reached my car, Patrice followed. "This doesn't have to be ugly," she said softly. "If you transfer it all to me, I'll make sure everyone gets what they deserve." I stared at her, stunned by how fast she'd switched from furious to gentle. "I need time," I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just remember, he was my father, not yours to keep." I turned the key in the ignition, trying to remember if she'd ever used the word please. It started with a voicemail from Colby. "You know this isn't what your grandfather would have wanted," he said, like he'd ever sat through a full dinner without checking his bank app. Then came a Facebook post from Clarice, vague enough to avoid legal trouble, pointed enough that people in our hometown knew exactly who she meant. Some people care more about power than family. Greed wears a nice blazer these days. I ignored it at first. Deleted messages, turned off comments, told myself it would pass. But it didn't. It escalated. Patrice's church friends started calling. One left me a voicemail quoting Proverbs. Another sent a group email about honoring one's parents with a thinly veiled note about daughters who forget where they come from. A coworker pulled me aside after lunch and said gently, "Your mom called the office." Again. My boss eventually told reception not to forward any more personal calls. I nodded in thanks, but my hands were still shaking when I went back to my desk. Clarice texted at 2 a.m. "One night, I hope you're proud. Zane won't even look Mom in the eye." 2 minutes later, another message, "You broke this family." I didn't respond. Then Zane showed up at my apartment. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he was taller than me now, but folded into himself like someone bracing for fallout. I opened the door and stepped aside without saying a word. He sat on the couch, elbows on knees. "I don't want the money," he said quietly. "I just wanted to say that." I nodded. "I know." He looked around like the silence made him nervous. "Mom's not okay. Like she's spiraling. Clarice is fanning it. Colby's pouring drinks by 3 p.m. You should know. She's planning something. I don't know what, but she won't let this go." I swallowed the weight sitting in my chest. "Thanks for telling me." He stood halfway to the door. "I didn't say anything to them about coming here." "Smart." He turned back. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure how to explain the kind of tired that follows you even into your dreams. After he left, I sat in the dark, unread messages, still lighting up my phone. I didn't open them. I just stared at the screen and for the first time wondered if silence was starting to cost me more than speaking ever would. The call came just after midnight. I almost didn't answer when I saw Craig's name, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice slurred before he even said hello. "You think you're better than us." He muttered background noise of a television too loud behind him. "Little Miss MBA with her inheritance. Craig, it's late." "You think we didn't see this coming?" He cut in. "You think we didn't have plans?" My throat tightened. "What plans?" He laughed sharp and bitter. "The Naples house for starters. Deposit's been down since April. Colby's been dreaming about that beach view for years." "April?" I asked, stunned. "Grandpa didn't even die until June." Exactly, he snapped like I was the slow one. The man was on borrowed time. "We just got a little ahead of the curve." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My hands were cold. "You're not family anymore," he added, voice hardening. "You're a barrier, and barriers get handled." He hung up. I didn't cry at first. I sat on the couch holding the phone like it might start talking again. Then, something inside me cracked open, and the sobs came in waves, deep, guttural, humiliating. That's how Ethan found me. He used his spare key when I didn't respond to a single text. No questions, no judgment. He just wrapped a blanket around me and sat there, letting me fall apart. "You can't keep absorbing this alone," he said when I finally calmed down. "You need someone in your corner who knows what they're doing." The next day, he introduced me to Samantha Reed, a sharp, composed attorney with a quiet voice and eyes that missed nothing. She asked me to walk through everything, the calls, the threats, the will, the voicemail from Craig. "If they're escalating," she said calmly, "we need to assume they'll try legal action. That means you need proof, anything that shows your grandfather's intentions were sound and deliberate." I nodded, still hollowed out. "I don't have anything besides the will." Samantha leaned forward. "Then we start there. But if there's even a chance he shared more documents, letters, conversations, we'll need it. Because this isn't just about defending what you inherited. It's about protecting what he trusted you to carry forward." I looked down at my hands, remembering a photo I hadn't thought about in years. Grandpa Walter standing with his arm around another man outside the original store, both laughing like they'd just solved something big. The call came just after midnight. I almost didn't answer when I saw Craig's name, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice slurred before he even said hello. "You think you're better than us?" He muttered background noise of a television too loud behind him. "Little Miss MBA with her inheritance. Craig, it's late." "You think we didn't see this coming?" He cut in. "You think we didn't have plans?" My throat tightened. What plans? He laughed, sharp and bitter. The Naples house for starters. Deposit's been down since April. Colby's been dreaming about that beach view for years. April? I asked, stunned. Grandpa didn't even die until June. Exactly, he snapped like I was the slow one. The man was on borrowed time. We just got a little ahead of the curve. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My hands were cold. You're not family anymore, he added, voice hardening. You're a barrier, and barriers get handled. He hung up. I didn't cry at first. I sat on the couch holding the phone like it might start talking again. Then something inside me cracked open, and the sobs came in waves, deep, guttural, humiliating. That's how Ethan found me. He used his spare key when I didn't respond to a single text. No questions, no judgment. He just wrapped a blanket around me and sat there letting me fall apart. You can't keep absorbing this alone, he said when I finally calmed down. You need someone in your corner who knows what they're doing. The next day, he introduced me to Samantha Reed, a sharp, composed attorney with a quiet voice and eyes that missed nothing. She asked me to walk through everything, the calls, the threats, the will, the voicemail from Craig. If they're escalating, she said calmly, we need to assume they'll try legal action. That means you need proof anything that shows your grandfather's intentions were sound and deliberate. I nodded, still hollowed out. I don't have anything besides the will. Samantha leaned forward. Then we start there. But if there's even a chance he shared more documents, letters, conversations, we'll need it. Because this isn't just about defending what you inherited. It's about protecting what he trusted you to carry forward. I looked down at my hands, remembering a photo I hadn't thought about in years. Grandpa Walter standing with his arm around another man outside the original store, both laughing like they'd just solved something big. George Harmon met me at a small diner off the interstate, the kind of place Grandpa used to love. He stood when I walked in, still strong despite his age, and wrapped me in a hug that knocked the air from my chest. You look like him, he said quietly. Around the eyes, we talked over black coffee, and when I told him what was happening, he didn't look surprised. Walter worried about this for years, he said. He tried everything loans, second chances, guilt, but they never changed. That's why he left it to you. Not out of favoritism, Malin. Out of clarity. He reached into his coat and handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written in Grandpa's careful, blocky handwriting. He gave this to me months before he passed. Told me to deliver it if things got ugly. Back at my apartment, I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, 3 pages written in blue ink. He wrote about the years he spent watching the family fall apart financially, the excuses, the lies, the damage. He wrote about me, about how I'd shown restraint work ethic and loyalty without expecting rewards. He ended with a single line that hit me harder than anything else. You are the only one I trust not to spend what I built, but to protect it. I cried reading it. Then I pulled down the metal lockbox Grandpa had once given me for important papers. I'd never thought much of it before. Inside, tucked between insurance forms and old deeds, was a leather-bound journal. Every loan, every gift, every broken promise. Dates, amounts, notes in his handwriting. Said it was for Clarice's medical bill. Spotted her at the casino 2 days later. I scanned the pages, then picked up my phone and called Samantha. The living room was already full when I arrived. Clarice, stiff on the couch, Colby pacing Zane in the corner with his arms folded tight across his chest. 2 men I didn't recognize stood near the fireplace with folders in hand. My mother greeted me with the kind of smile that always meant danger. These gentlemen are here to help formalize a redistribution of the estate, she said sweetly. To keep things civil. They presented it like a compromise, 20% for me, the rest shared among the family. I didn't touch the pen they offered. Instead, I reached into my bag and laid down my own set of documents. Receipts, emails, the letter from Grandpa, a copy of the will, and a USB with Craig's drunken voicemail. I read aloud from Grandpa's journal, quoting line after line he'd written with weary honesty. Patrice shifted in her seat. Clarice flushed and looked away. And this, I said last, is a recording of Craig admitting you were already spending the money before Grandpa passed, including a deposit on a house in Naples. Colby swore under his breath. The room turned still. Then Zane stood. "She's telling the truth," he said, voice steady. "I've seen Mom spiral. I've seen how she talks when she thinks no one's listening. I'm done pretending this is about fairness." Clarice started to protest, but Zane shook his head. "You've all lied for years. She's the only one who never took anything." I looked at him stunned. He nodded once like he meant it. My mother opened her mouth, but Samantha walked in from the hallway before she could speak. "I'm Ms. Carter's legal counsel," she said clearly, "and I advise everyone here to reconsider their next move carefully." I turned back to the table and pushed the unsigned papers across it. Zane moved in the following week with one duffel bag and a silence I didn't press. We didn't talk much the first few days, but he unloaded boxes at the hardware office without being asked and listened carefully during meetings with Grandpa's old managers. When I handed him a set of keys to the store, he just nodded and pocketed them like it was always meant to happen. We updated the business model, slowly kept the bones modernized the rest. I watched Zane light up as he learned the inventory system, quoting something Grandpa once said about knowing your bolts like your books. He didn't call it healing, but that's what it felt like. Rachel reached out a month later, not for money, just coffee. She apologized, said she'd believed our mother's version of things too easily. I didn't forgive her outright, but I didn't shut her out either. Some bridges are worth repairing even if you walk across them slowly. With Samantha's help, I set up a foundation in Grandpa's name grants for young tradespeople with no safety net, the kind of thing he would have loved. For the first time since he died, the weight of the inheritance felt less like a burden and more like a blueprint. The message came late at night. Just one word, truce. I stared at it for a long time before replying. We met at a small cafe near the outskirts of town. She looked thinner, older, like the storm had finally slowed her down. Craig was gone. She mentioned it casually, like she was still learning how to say it out loud. Therapy, too. A few sessions in. No grand apology, no rehashing of the will. Just fragments of honesty cautiously laid on the table. "I didn't know how to stop," she admitted, eyes fixed on her coffee. "I thought if I lost control, I'd disappear." I didn't argue. I didn't comfort. I just listened. For once, it didn't feel like surrendering to her story. It felt like choosing my own. When we stood to leave, she reached out first, not for reconciliation, but for acknowledgement, and I let her hand rest briefly in mine. The last page of Grandpa's journal held only one line scribbled in his unmistakable hand. "The true measure of wealth isn't what you have, but what you do with it." I read it twice, then closed the cover gently. Zane's finishing his first year of business classes and already talking about opening a second location. Rachel volunteers twice a week at the women's shelter and brings me articles about trauma-informed finance like we're slowly learning a new language together. I said yes to Ethan last month. The ring is simple, quiet, just like the kind of life we're building. Sometimes I still feel the echo of everything we lost, but I don't carry the will like a shield anymore. I carry it like a map, because Grandpa didn't just give me his legacy, he trusted me to grow it. And now, I finally trust myself to pass it on. My name is Elena Graves. I'm 30 now. I live in Maryland and work as a family law attorney. But this story doesn't begin in a courtroom. It begins long before I knew what justice meant. It begins the moment I saw Cheryl Andrews walk into our house 2 weeks after we buried my mother. That day, my father looked me in the eye and said, "If you've got a problem with her living here, you can leave." Then he did something I'll never forget. He held the front door open and waited. I was 16. I didn't have a suitcase. I didn't even have socks on. But I walked out. The rain had just started. I remember the smell of wet grass and cheap cologne. I remember looking back one last time and seeing them, my father and his new woman, standing in the hallway where my mother used to hum and fold laundry. And I remember wondering, how do people replace a wife that fast? How do you replace a mother before the flowers on her grave have even wilted? It took me years to come back. But when I did, I wasn't alone. And I didn't come back for closure. I didn't come back to forgive anyone. I came back because someone else was asking for help. And that someone was the very woman who took my mother's place. The house I grew up in sat at the edge of a red clay road in rural North Carolina. From the outside, it looked still white shutters, a creaky porch swing, and an old oak tree that shaded the front yard like a watchful parent. But inside that house, everything was waiting to break. My father, Gerald Graves, was a large man, not just in size, but in presence. He was a former Army mechanic discharged early for reasons no one ever said out loud. He walked like he owned the air in the room, and when he was angry, even the furniture leaned away. My mother, Marla, had once been a music teacher. When I was little, I used to watch her hands dance across the piano. By the time I was 6, the piano was gone, sold to cover bills. Her hands were quiet after that, except when they reached for me. The first time he hit me, I had spilled milk at dinner. A dumb mistake. I was only 6. The glass tipped and soaked the tablecloth my mother had just ironed. He stared at me like I had cursed in church. "You think this is your house," he said, and then came the slap. I don't remember the pain. Just the sound, the plate clattering off the table, my mother's chair scraping back, and then her voice shaking. "She's just a child, Gerald." He pushed her away. She hit the wall behind the fridge. She didn't cry. She only looked at me. That night, she sat beside me in bed, dabbing a cold washcloth on my cheek. Her voice was low when she said it. "Elena, sometimes people who are supposed to protect you don't know how." She wasn't making excuses. She was warning me. From that night on, I knew this was not a house with accidents. This was a house with patterns, and patterns don't fix themselves. When my sister Lacey was born, I was 8. She came into the world with soft fingers, a high, clear cry, and a smile that seemed to make my mother breathe again. But something else shifted too. My father, this man who threw dinner plates when I coughed too loud, he changed. Not completely. But around Lacey, he was gentle. He called her my little light. He held her like she was spun from glass. He never raised his voice, never scolded her not once. And for a while, I was grateful. I told myself, good. At least he won't ruin her the way he ruined Mom. Or me. But as the months passed, I began to disappear. It started with small things. If Lacey cried and I was in the room, he'd look at me first. If something broke, I was the one who should have been watching. One night, I accidentally knocked over her stuffed giraffe. It hit the floor, barely made a sound. She didn't even notice, but he did. He slapped me so hard, I stumbled into the hallway. "You make your sister cry again, and you'll wish you hadn't." That night, I sat in the corner of my room holding the giraffe. I wasn't angry at Lacey. She was just a baby. But I remember thinking, what did she get that I didn't? What did I do wrong to be the one he couldn't love? My mother found me there sitting in the dark. She didn't ask what happened. She just held me and whispered, "I love you both, but I know. It doesn't always feel like that." It didn't. And the older I got, the more it felt like I was just someone they had before they got it right. By the time I turned 14, my mother was fading. Not physically, she still cooked dinner, still packed Lacey's school lunches with a sticky note smile. But her spirit, it was thinning. She stopped humming, stopped wearing earrings, stopped sitting under the oak tree with me in the evening. I'd come home from school and find her sitting at the kitchen table staring into cold tea like it might finally say something comforting. "Mom," I'd ask. She'd blink. Force a smile. "I'm okay, Elena, just tired." But she was always tired. And when you live in a house like that, tired can mean something worse. The arguments between my parents got louder, sharper. They didn't fight about money anymore. They fought about someone else. A name I didn't recognize at first. Cheryl. "You think I don't know?" my mother shouted one night. "You think I don't hear you whispering on the porch like some teenager?" My father didn't deny it. He just rolled his eyes and went for another drink. That was the first time I saw my mother punch the wall. Her knuckles bruised the next morning, hidden under a dish towel. Later that week, I found a folded pamphlet in her drawer. It was from a local shelter. On the cover, "Domestic Abuse, Know the Signs." That's when I started writing everything down. The dates he came home drunk, the bruises he left behind, the things he said when he thought no one was listening. I didn't know what I was building. Maybe I thought if I kept the truth somewhere safe, I could make it matter one day. But even then, I was starting to wonder if I was already too late. Because the look in my mother's eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was surrender. And surrender in a house like ours doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes it means disappearing before someone else takes that choice from you. It happened on a Tuesday, October, cloudy, the kind of day where nothing feels solid under your feet. I was late getting home from school, stayed back at the library to finish an essay. The house was quiet when I walked in. No TV, no pots clanging, no Lacey singing to her dolls. Just my father on the couch, staring at the wall, an empty bottle on the carpet. He looked at me like I was interrupting something. "Your mother fell down the stairs," he said flatly. "She's at the hospital, that was all. Not, she's hurt, not, we need to go." Just a headline, dry, cold. "What, how?" I asked, stepping forward. His face tightened. "She fell?" he snapped, standing up. "That's all, don't start." He shoved past me and reached for his coat. "I need more whiskey." I ran, didn't even grab my bag. Just ran the 5 blocks to the emergency room. Lacey was sitting in the waiting area, legs swinging off a plastic chair, clutching her doll. Her eyes were red. When she saw me, she burst into tears. "Mom won't wake up." A nurse led me in. My mother lay in the bed like a stranger, still pale, her arms covered in purplish bruises. But it was the mark along her neck that froze me. A faint line, like a thumbprint pressed too hard. The doctor said it was a catastrophic head injury. She must have fallen backward, hit the stairs wrong. They did everything they could. She didn't make it. I remember touching her hand. It was still warm, and in that moment, I thought if I stayed completely still, maybe I could keep her with me. Maybe if I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't break, the world would pause too. But it didn't. The funeral was held 4 days later. My father wore a wrinkled shirt and smelled like he hadn't bathed. He didn't cry, didn't speak to me or Lacey. The neighbors came, whispered. One of them hugged me too long and said, "If you ever need anything." But no one said what we all knew, that my mother hadn't just fallen, that someone pushed her, maybe not with hands, but with years of cruelty, and that whatever happened at the top of those stairs, it wasn't an accident. Not really. But I had no proof, only a notebook full of bruises no one wanted to read, and a little sister who still whispered "Mom" in her sleep. 2 weeks after the funeral, I walked into our house and smelled perfume, not the kind my mother used to wear. Hers was soft powdery like pressed lilacs. This was sharper, synthetic, cheap. Cheryl was in the kitchen, wearing my mother's apron, pouring iced tea like she'd lived there all along. My father stood next to her, beer in handbelly resting on the counter like nothing had ever happened. He didn't look at me when he said it. "This is Cheryl. She'll be living here now." I stared at him, then at her. She smiled like someone who had already won something. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "Mom's only been gone." "You don't tell me what I can and can't do in my own house," he snapped. When I didn't move, he stepped closer. "If you've got a problem with her, you can get out." He opened the door and waited. No one yelled, no one cried, not even Lacey. She was in the living room, knees tucked to her chest, clutching her doll like it might protect her. I walked out with nothing but the clothes on my back and my school bag half zipped. No jacket, no toothbrush, no plan. Just the wind and that perfume clinging to my lungs. I didn't look back until I reached the sidewalk. And even then, the only thing I saw was the porch light flicking on like I'd never been part of that house to begin with. I spent that night under the metal awning of a closed gas station. It rained. I used my backpack as a pillow, and sometime around 3 a.m., I whispered to the dark sky, "I think he killed her." No one answered, but I wasn't expecting anyone to, because by then I already knew in that house some people were replaceable. And some people were just in the way. I spent the night on a park bench near the grocery store where I used to bag apples after school. My jacket was still hanging on the hook by the door I'd been shoved out of. I didn't sleep much, just stared at the sky and waited for morning like it owed me something. By dawn, my teeth were chattering and the knot in my stomach had turned to nausea. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I walked to Tommy Sanders' house, my closest friend since 3rd grade. His mom, Mrs. Sanders, opened the door. Her eyes widened when she saw me, soaked, silent. 16. She didn't ask questions. She pulled me inside, gave me dry clothes from the laundry basket and a plate of eggs that I couldn't eat. Later, when I finally told her everything about my mother's death, the bruises, the woman in the kitchen, she just listened. She didn't gasp. Didn't say, "Are you sure?" She said, "Do you have any family?" I thought of Aunt Ruth, my mother's younger sister. They hadn't spoken often after Ruth moved to Maryland, but I remembered the way she cried at the funeral, the way she looked at my father like she saw through him. Mrs. Sanders handed me the phone. Ruth answered on the second ring. "Elena." Her voice cracked before I said a word. I told her everything. When I finished, she didn't say, "Oh, honey," or "let me think." She said, "I'm coming to get you." 3 hours later, she pulled into the Sanders driveway in a silver Subaru with peeling bumper stickers and tear tracks on her cheeks. She opened the passenger door but didn't rush me. When I climbed in, she took my hand. "We'll figure it out," she said, "and we'll get Lacey. I promise you that." For the first time in days, I let myself exhale, because just one person had said what I'd been trying not to need. "You're not alone." It took me almost a month to go back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed a plan and someone to stand beside me. That someone was Tom Aunt Ruth's husband. He was a retired firefighter with a soft voice and broad shoulders, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. When I told him what had happened, what was still happening, he didn't hesitate. "We'll get her out," he said. "And if he lays a hand on you again, he'll answer to me." We drove down on a Saturday. Overcast skies, just like the day my mother died. My chest felt hollow, like my heart had forgotten how to stay inside me. We parked a block away from the house. Tom placed a hand on my shoulder. "If anything feels off, we leave." "Understood." I nodded, though every part of me was already pulling toward that front door. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Overgrown yard, shutters sagging. That same oak tree out front, its branches still stretching like arms that once held me. I knocked. Cheryl opened the door. Her smile vanished. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for Lacey." She laughed. "She's not going anywhere." Then Gerald appeared behind her bottle in hand. He looked worse than before, grayer thinner, but his eyes still held that same old venom. "This is my house," he slurred. "You don't get to make demands." Tom stepped forward, calm, unmoved. "We're not here to fight. We're here to take the girl, that's all." I pushed past them and found Lacey in her room, sitting on the edge of her bed, hugging the same doll Mom had sewn years ago. Her cheek was red, her eyes wider than I remembered. When she saw me, she ran. "You came back," she whispered into my shirt. "Of course I did," I said, "and I'm not leaving without you." We turned to go, but Cheryl was blocking the hallway. "She's lying," she barked. "That kid bruised herself. She's just like her crazy mother." Before I could speak, Lacey said it for me. "You hit me. You hit me when Dad wasn't looking." That was all we needed. Tom stepped forward, and for the first time in my life, I watched my father take a step back. We walked out the front door. No yelling, no dragging. Just silence. And as the door closed behind us, I looked up at the oak tree. It hadn't changed, but I had. We didn't go back to North Carolina, not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even when the house was put up for sale a year later. Aunt Ruth enrolled Lacey and me in a small public school outside Annapolis. Tom fixed up the attic so we could each have a little space of our own. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet. And for the first time in years, I slept without bracing for footsteps in the hallway. Lacey started to laugh again. She made friends, joined the art club, and every night before bed, she'd draw something new, a tree, a star, our mother in a blue dress. I didn't know what I wanted, not at first. I just knew I wanted to matter. One day, I found my old notebook in the bottom of a moving box, the one where I'd written down every bruise, every lie, every scream I wasn't supposed to remember. I read it front to back, and then I opened a new one. On the first page, I wrote, "This time I'll speak for the ones who can't." I started community college at 18, transferred to university 2 years later. By 24, I was applying to law school with an essay titled, "The Case No One Took." I didn't write about my father. I didn't name names. But I told the truth. And the truth was this: I wasn't strong because of what he did to me. I was strong because just one person saw me as worth saving, and I wanted to become that person for someone else. I was 28 when the name came across my desk. Samantha McKee, requesting an emergency protection order, alleging repeated physical and verbal abuse from her husband Thomas Caldwell. I froze. Tom Caldwell, my father. The file was thin, but heavy photos, medical reports, written statements. Everything my mother never had. I took the folder to my supervisor. "Sir," I said, voice steady, "I need to declare a conflict. This man is my biological father." He stared at me for a long second. "Then, you want me to reassign?" I thought of Lacey. I thought of Mom. I thought of Samantha's hollow eyes in the intake photo. "No," I said. "I'd like to stay on." We met in a small conference room. Samantha walked in shoulders tight, hand wrapped in gauze. She flinched when the door clicked behind her. I stood up, extended a hand. "Elena Caldwell," I said. "Legal intern. You're safe here." She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw it. "That same question Mom used to carry, will anyone believe me? I used to live with him too," I added quietly. "Not as a weapon. Just a bridge." Samantha blinked fast, then nodded. "Okay," she said. "Okay." The case wasn't easy. He denied everything, claimed she bruised herself, claimed she made up the threats. But this time, there were documents, witnesses, police reports. I helped her organize every detail just like I used to in my old notebook. 2 weeks later, the judge granted the protective order. Samantha cried in the hallway, not loud, just a kind of crumpling sound. She turned to me and said, "I don't know how to thank you." "You just did," I replied. I never saw him that day, not in court, not outside. I don't know if he knew I was the one who helped her leave. And I didn't need him to. Somewhere in a dusty box, I still have Mom's apron. Still faintly smells like rosemary and smoke. But I don't wear it. I became something else. Not a daughter, not a victim. Just a witness to what silence costs and someone who chose not to stay quiet. If you've ever found your strength, only after walking away, you don't have to tell the whole story. Just leave one word your mother never heard.